Forget ISIS, forget illegal immigration, or even tit for tats over Iran. You want to know what's bugging Americans most these days? The government. You heard me right. The same Washington, presumably trying to fix all of these messes, is the biggest mess of all. More Americans citing the government as their biggest worry than the economy, than jobs, than anything. To Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, who says that pretty much says everything. Senator, that even surprised me. I mean, it's a play off the old Ronald Reagan thing. The government is the problem. What's your takeaway?
Well, that's right. It is so big that it's almost impossible to manage. Everything is coming down in this administration to the federal government controlling everything. You take immigration, when a president can issue an executive order that basically jumps as many as 5 million people over those who've been standing in line. The hundreds of thousands have been standing in line, playing by the rules, living up to the laws. There's something wrong with that, and the American people understand that. You take almost any other thing, Obamacare, my gosh, it's reckoned the health care in this country over time, it's going to be so expensive we can't afford it. And right now it's pretty difficult to afford it even now.
But do you take any umbrage in that, Senator, that you might be kind of dragged into that as Republicans as well, that they're saying a pox on both parties' houses? We don't like the House. We don't like the Senate. We don't like the White House. We're just sick of government. How do you counter it?
Well, I think the difference is that the Republicans are not for bigger and bigger government. We think we ought to bring power back to the states and to the people themselves, and we stand for that, and we think it can be done better. We know that states can do a better job for their interior, for the people within their states, than the federal government can. And the more and more you build this federal government, more and more nobody knows what's going on. Take CMS. CMS is one of the largest agencies in government. It's $1 trillion a year to run CMS, and yet that's just a small part of HHS. Well, it's a large part of HHS, but you have HHS running CMS and not doing a very good job at that. And you can go into almost all these agencies and find all kinds of failures because the federal government is not going to run things as well as the state and local governments will. And the people want to be a little more free than what we are right now.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up this whole Iran letter, and your colleague Ron Johnson doesn't take anything against writing it, maybe to the Iranian leaders he wrote it, that maybe who it was delivered to was the problem. Do you share that?
Well, I can say this, that, I don't blame Senator Cotton for coming up with this letter, and I think basically it's sending to Iran, look, what you're going to enter into with the president is just an executive order, and that can be changed by the next presidency. I think that's important for, they probably understand that, but it's important for them to understand that Congress has a role here.
No, I agree. Obviously, that's kind of what he was saying, but that you got caught up in the fodder from an Iranian leader then coming out and just making it the football and not the message.
Well, it wasn't just the Iranian leader, it was the Democrats in Congress who did it, because they're so used to just running everything, and they think they don't realize they're in a minority as we speak. They're not allowing any votes. They're not allowing.
Well, maybe that gets back to the whole malaise with government, right? It's just so out of control. Right?
Well, part of that is because it's big government where you can't run it. You can't run it from the Congress. You can't get Congress to be part of it. You got a president who's out of whack, who hates the Congress and is going to do everything on executive order basis. You got a president who's going to veto everything, take the Keystone Pipeline. My gosh, it doesn't take any brains at all to know that that's a pretty doggone important thing to do, and yet. Look at what he's done. Take the IRS. I'm in the middle of the IRS investigation.
Take the IRS, please. I'm going to leave it at that. Senator, we're pushed for time, but it's always good having you, sir, and I very much appreciate you taking the time.
Nice to be with you.
Orrin Hatch. Well, in the meantime.